Live from the mainstream cannabis media empire, I'm Travis Lippert, CEO of Verks Unlimited Limited, better known as Veedverks.
I'm Michael Miller, Marketing Director for PanaceaLife.com, CBD manufacturer here in Colorado.
You say a different job title.
I know. You know what?
You just get demoted?
Okay, I'm unemployed and I'm looking for someone that wants to hire a hired gun. No, I'm teasing. I love it. But I will help anyone out there, that's for sure. Grow their business, CBD, hemp, or what have you. It's a beautiful day outside.
It is a beautiful day.
No, you know what? I kind of like it, though. It's overcast. It's a little misty out there, and we got a little bit of snow last night. That's pretty cool.
Well, I like that it only snowed on the grass.
Yeah.
Made it pretty, but you didn't have to drive on it.
Right,
that
true.
geo-engineered snow that they're making these days that only is attracted to grass. It's magic.
Yeah, magic snow. Exciting show today.
Today we have on Mark Goldfogel from several endeavors.
Absolutely.
Industry expert.
Pioneer in the industry.
Entrepreneur. All-around good guy. Burner.
Crash test dummy.
Yeah.
Burner.
Yeah, and really helped our industry back in the day with rules and regulations.
Well, thanks for joining the show, Mark. I appreciate
Welcome, Mark.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Travis. Michael, good to see you as well.
Amen.
It's not good to see. It's not as good.
I know. Yeah, you'd rather talk to Travis, so I'm just going to sit here and shut up.
So, how did you get? No, actually, what did you do before the cannabis industry, Mark?
So I have really always been kind of a career nerd. I started off my career in high school, if you can imagine, programming computers, and that led me to a college career in marketing, and almost my entire life has been somewhere or another geeking out. And the height of that career, I was a middle management suck up for a company called ADP, one of the largest data processing companies in the world, and I helped build some software used in the automotive industry. It's the biggest database I've ever been a part of. It's called Service Pricing Guides, and that's contracted over $1 trillion in transactions. Virtually every automobile manufacturer in the world uses Service Pricing Guides today, and that was good enough for me to become a ski bum and kind of land in Telluride. And I opened an IT tech support business in Telluride, and my corporate motto is no employees. And that was it. It was me, myself, and I worked as a consultant, and I lived in Telluride, and I had a great life. And I really thought I was done. I was pretty much retired as far as I was concerned at about 30. And living the life as a ski bum, not a care in the world. And on the anniversary of my Up With People reunion tour, right after I got off the stage as a drummer, my large intestine sprung.
Yeah, go back, rewind.
Okay, so
Travis is a musician.
12 years ago, I guess it is now, I was living in Telluride. I had my IT tech support business called Wonder Dog. I had a website development company called Web Dogs. And I was attending my 20th reunion of a thing called Up With People, which is a young organization of kids that travel all over the world and do community service and put on a show.
Nice.
And I was a drummer for the organization, and I put on the show for the organization as a drummer. And this was my 20-year reunion, so I'm up on stage with a lot of gray-haired people that used to have talent, including myself. And we got off the stage, and I'm literally backstage and looking out in Tucson, Arizona at the sky, saying, God, thank you for my perfect life, my perfect wife, my perfect job. I wouldn't change anything. I am just as happy as I could possibly be. And in that exact moment, my large intestine started to spew fecal matter into my body cavity. And I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the flu. So I waited 5 full days before I finally made it to the emergency room, at which point in time I was diagnosed as 5 days septic. And what was called post-protocol, which basically meant I had so much shit in my body cavity that they didn't feel comfortable operating on me to take it out. And I almost died. The antibiotics took effect. I was in the best shape of my life, and so the antibiotics were able to quell and reverse the infection before it took me. And 3 months later, I had surgery to remove 3 feet of my large intestine and a mass about the size of a grapefruit of shit from my large intestine. But prior to the surgery, after they released me from the ICU and sent me home, I couldn't stop throwing up. And it was that nonstop vomiting that brought me into the marijuana industry, because all the pharmaceuticals the doctor recommended did nothing for nausea control. I couldn't swallow a pill long enough for it to do any good. And I'm eyeing the suppository when a neighbor comes by and says, "Hey, dude, you might want to smoke a bowl." And I said, "Hey, dude, you might want to get out of here. I just got out of the ICU. I'm sick. I don't need recreational amusement right now." And he explained that a similar thing happened to him, and weed was magnificent for nausea. Remember, this is in 2007. So there wasn't a lot known about marijuana as a medicine back then. And I and most people who knew what marijuana was good for, skiing, sex, concerts, didn't really take it seriously as a medicine. But when it stopped me from throwing up when no other medicine would, I took it seriously, and I made a commitment in that moment to do whatever was in my power to help end prohibition. And I'm a computer nerd, so in my world, every problem, there's no such thing as a problem that cannot be made significantly more complicated with technology. And so I promised to build a computer system that would legitimize cannabis, and I had no idea what that meant, and I had no idea how that was going to work, but my way of solving problems is to build computer systems.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Travis, you looked alerted. Did a bear just walk in the studio?
No, I've been trying to pay attention to where the sounds come from in here, and so I heard a sound, and I was seeing if they were doing using a saw around here.
Yeah, here it's probably out back.
I think it's on your end.
Oh yeah.
No, I've got nothing going on.
Okay, well then neither did. You didn't even hear it.
We're hearing things. That's another side effect of MJ.
Can I ask you, before you get into what you did with the technology? So when you say that cannabis helped you not be nauseous, can you explain that in greater detail? Like, what did it feel like to be nauseous, and then what did?
Sure. I hate this story. So basically, when I got out of the hospital, I was in Montrose Memorial Hospital, and they moved, and I was living in Telluride at the time, which was another 3,000 feet altitude above Montrose. And I lived up a 3-flight walk up. And so by the time I got out of the ICU, made it back to Telluride, made it up the 3-flight walk up, my body was in full revolt. I was literally vomiting every 15 to 45 minutes, 24 hours a day for 5 days straight.
Wow.
I could not leave the bathroom. I slept with my head on the porcelain toilet, just trying to keep the cool of the porcelain in order to maintain equilibrium. And what I should have done was check myself back in the hospital and gone back on IVs. But I was in no desire to do that. I certainly didn't have any insurance that was interested in paying for any more hospitalization. And I was going to tough it out. I'm very good at biofeedback. I'm very good at meditating, and I was going to just win through sheer willpower. And I was losing. And in fact, in all honesty, I was losing to the point where I was contemplating suicide.
Wow.
At one point in time, I'd taken all the anti-nausal pills my doctor recommended at the same time, and that made me even more sick.
Of course, yeah.
So the surprise in my mind, the surprise that occurred to me when I had literally one hit of weed and was up singing, "It's a new day, it's a new dawn, it's a new life for me." It was what was on the radio at the time, and making myself a sandwich within 10 minutes.
Wow.
It was the first time I'd left the bathroom in 5 days, and I'm in the kitchen making myself a sandwich. I don't know what just happened to me. And it was literally like a bolt of lightning hit me. And in that moment, I had this fantasy that I was going to be the nerd that ended cannabis prohibition, and that I was going to be able to speak before Congress, and that I was going to. And I just got completely obsessed with the idea that I knew something the world didn't know, and it was going to be my obligation to educate the world to the power of cannabis. And it was in looking back on it, it was incredibly selfish, self-centered, arrogant point of view. Who am I to think that I'm anybody to anybody? And so I promised to build this computer system that was going to legitimize cannabis. And we went out to a bunch of different dispensaries, and we found that without exception, not a single dispensary in 2009 had the slightest interest in having a point of sale system. It was incriminating. All your customers' information was kept on there. We built it on the web, and nobody wanted their customers' information out on the internet where it could be hacked or stolen or, God forbid, taken over by the government. And now it's all incriminating and used to put people in jail. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 dispensaries that had the foresight to come forward. Ironically, all 3 have been closed or bought out since then. But the first one was Denver Relief and Ian Seed. Oh, yeah. And Ian was an old family friend of mine, and Ian agreed to prepay for some software in exchange for a lifetime's license of it. And my promise to him that we would build software that would let him track, trace, and control marijuana. The problem was that there was no such thing as tracking, tracing, and controlling marijuana, because all the government was saying was don't get caught. Well, a computer system is the antithesis of don't get caught. And nobody wanted it. 3 months after MJ Freeway had started, and we were running with a handful of non-paying clients that didn't want to use the system, and no government regulation that would give them any immunity for using the system, my brother was able to arrange a breakfast meeting with the top regulator in the state of Colorado at that time, a gentleman by the name of Matt Cook. And Matt Cook and his sidekick, a man named Dan Hartman, and my wife at the time, Amy Poinsett, the former CEO of MJ Freeway, and I and my brother went to a early morning breakfast meeting. I'm not a morning person. And Matt confided that computer systems all well and good, but what he really needed was something to prove to the DEA that Colorado was not going to be like California, that we were not going to take tons of this stuff and ship it across state lines, that we weren't going to grow hundreds of thousands of pounds under a, quote, medical program that we would be giving away to everybody, and that there'd be some way that if somebody got sick from the consumption of marijuana, that there would be a traceability opportunity for the state. Because normally health and human safety is under the purview of the federal government, and the federal government isn't going to touch marijuana with a 10-foot pole. Again, this is 2009. I had, at that point in time, never really seen marijuana grown. I think I'd seen one marijuana plant in my life. I knew what marijuana was good for, and I actually at that point in time knew that it had medical value as well. But that doesn't mean that I'd ever grown it, been a part of growing it, or knew anything other than it came from my hippie neighbor's backpack every time I wanted to buy some. And in that breakfast meeting, I turned to Matt and I said, well, this is really not complicated at all. If we just track everything from seed to sale, then we've got diversion control, we've got health and human safety, and we've got taxation all in one paradigm. And he said, seed to sale tracking, I like that. And he wrote it down, and we said seed to sale tracking, and we wrote it down, and we called up our third partner who was in Atlanta at the time taking care of her daughter, and we asked her to file a patent on seed to sale tracking. None of us had a clue what seed to sale tracking was, how it worked, and I didn't even know that marijuana wasn't commercially grown from seed. And so I love to tell this story because today seed to sale tracking is the paradigm that everybody uses to control, regulate, and tax marijuana, and it doesn't in any way reflect the actual names of the paradigm. We don't track from seed. It isn't individually tracked, and everything comes out in averages. But that was good enough, and that was what got started. And I had the 1-2 punch of being the guy that first proposed seed to sale tracking and simultaneously being the founder of the first computer system guaranteed to meet any compliance guidelines for the legitimization of cannabis. And I went from thinking I was hot shit to really believing I was hot shit. And you know what? none of us are hot shit. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. And I later learned, once the company made it to cash flow positive, actually the month the company made it to cash flow positive, I learned that my wife and other partner had other plans for the company as being an all-woman founded company, and there was no more room for me. And I was basically divorced out of the company. I was over $880,000 in personal debt at the time, and I was refunded my debt and told that I could walk away or I could die under my own personal debt, because none of it was secured by the company. All of it was secured personally by me.
Wow.
So I took it. I took my walking papers and walked, and I woke up the next morning with a pretty bad hangover. And I went to a marijuana conference in Seattle, one of the many times I met Mr. Miller sitting next to you.
Yeah. At the horse track, right?
At the horse track.
Yep.
And at that track, a gentleman by the name of Steven Siegel, who was the CEO at the time of MJ Freeway's biggest competitor, a company called BioTrack. And Steven, in front of my ex-wife and ex-business partner, offered me his job as CEO of BioTrack, which 3 weeks out of my divorce, I did not have the stomach to do.
Right.
But what I did have the stomach to do was continue to try and end the prohibition problem. And I found a kiosk at that same convention, and I thought if we could retrofit this kiosk to, instead of it pouring out money like a normal ATM does, but instead accept the money, maybe we can provide the legitimization for banks to take deposits the same way seed to sale tracking provided the legitimization for governments to take the deposits. And I once again got full of myself, figured out that we could do that. And 3 months before the banking guidelines came out, just like 3 months before seed to sale tracking came out, I started MJ Freeway. 3 months before the banking guidelines came out, I started a company called C Forever Systems that was guaranteeing to do for banks what MJ Freeway guaranteed to do for governments. The problem was that banks don't really need systems. What banks need are bureaucrats to tell them that what they're doing is okay. And while I had sold over 700 pre-orders of kiosks to dispensaries, the regulators came by one and told the banks that they're not comfortable with the banks taking the deposits regardless of the technology involved. And I went from having 700 pre-orders to literally having an empty shell of a company overnight. And I walked away. And I joined up with a group called the Fourth Corner Credit Union, who were predominantly a bunch of lawyers who had figured out that if we built a de novo or a from scratch credit union, we would have the ability to stand up to regulators and actually offer a banking system that the industry would have for the whole industry. And because all of our investment would be in the marijuana side, we wouldn't have anything to lose because we have everything to lose. And that was the paradox that I really thought would solve the banking problem, because regulators don't control banks, regulators advise banks. And as long as the bank was profitable and doing things legally and legitimately, the credit union would not only have the opportunity to open, but potentially could offer this service to banks around the country to allow the whole marijuana banking problem to be solved. And I put my shoulder behind it. I put everything I had behind the Fourth Corner Credit Union because it was honest. It was in integrity. There was no fast, surprise gotchas like I found at MJ Freeway. It was all up and above board and meant to do the right thing for the industry. And unfortunately, the Federal Reserve got wind of what we were trying to do and made it their mission to make sure that the Fourth Corner Credit Union never opened. And we ended up taking them to court, and 4 years of legal battles, and 4 judges later, we were able to convince the Federal Reserve that it is our right to have a master account and that they don't have an opportunity to tell us no. And they did. Oh, I'll bet that's the sound you're hearing. That was the fan.
No, it was here.
It was here.
It was here.
Okay. And so I had that opportunity to really try and build a financial institution that would have solved this problem for the whole industry. And sadly, the Federal Reserve blocked us. And even when we won in court, the continuing hurdles of opening a credit union in this very sketchy industry has kept the Fourth Corner from ever opening. And it's sad because millions of dollars were spent. The governor of the state of Colorado was personally behind it. We have a board of directors of some of the highest integrity people that I know. And there was nothing about the fourth corner that should have failed, other than the fact that it had a reputation issue with the Federal Reserve because we wanted to deal with this disreputable industry.
And you continue to support them pro bono, is that?
I do. That's right. I will, as long as the fourth corner is driving the ball forward, I will be part of it. And I have been pro bono with them for years now. And it has had an impact. Currently, before Congress, there is a bill called the Safe Access to Banking Bill. And that bill was really put forward as a result of the fourth corner's plight. Sadly, it was put forward in 2015 or 15, I think, as a result of the fourth corner's plight. And Congress, one person in Congress had that bill being blocked to being heard up until this year. That person, a guy named Pete Sessions, is no longer in Congress. Pete's gone, and it was the first bill that was heard in Congress, and it has moved on to be heard by the full Congress. Likely it will pass Congress, and we will have legalized banking in the near future. The Fourth Corner Credit Union was really instrumental in getting that legislature forward. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of seed to sale tracking. I'm proud of what those things have done for the industry and where they've moved things forward. The industry is so magnificent. There's so many opportunities. And there's so many areas where a guy who has gotten his ass kicked consistently since 2009 can be of value. And so when the credit union stopped having any funds to pay me, I basically opened up a small consulting business, and I've been helping startup companies find funding, get their sales, their marketing together, do whatever they need to do, window washing, dishes, whatever's necessary in a startup in order to get cash flow flowing is really my specialty. And I really love working with companies to get them to cash flow positive. That's what I did to MJ Freeway, and I was very proud to get it to cash flow positive before I was fired.
Wow.
That was really one of my most, I was very proud of that. I'd worked over 2 years for free, as had my partners, to get the company to where it could pay us a salary. And I was able to make 1 month's salary before I learned of the true design of my founders. And so what? You win some and you lose some. It was very painful to me to lose my wife of 20 years over the loss of MJ Freeway, and totally unnecessary. But unfortunately, that's what happens when greed and big business takes over common sense. Sometimes people get inhumane.
Well, karma comes around too. Don't forget that.
Well, and it did for them, and I don't wish that on them.
No, I'm just saying it does come around.
If you follow what happened to MJ Freeway, in 2013 is when I was forced out of my equity, November 2013, and that's when we had that conference at the dog track. And by 2014, MJ Freeway had its first catastrophic server crash for a server migration that had their customers down for several weeks. And they then later had more data. They had a data theft in 2016, software theft in 2017. Someone destroyed all of their data and backups later in 2017. There really is not a difficulty that could befall a software company that didn't strike MJ Freeway after I'd left. That didn't make me feel better. I built MJ Freeway was the fifth transaction system that I'd been a part of to do over $1 billion in sales, and it is the only one that I've ever been a part of that had been hacked, data stolen, that it had gone down multiple times. And it really made me very sad because the company had so much promise and potential, and it really let us all down. It let the whole industry down.
Yeah.
And fortunately, there were other companies like BioTrack that did step up and really did take the ball and offered clients something they could depend on.
Right.
And it makes me very sad because MJ Freeway was the first point of sale in the industry, and I built it to be the platform that freed marijuana. That's why I named it MJ Freeway. After I left, it became a totally different platform and really doesn't resemble much of what I contributed to the company at all.
Right.
But it is still in existence, and they're still alive, and they're still trying to service their customers, and I applaud them for that. My wife has since moved on from the company, and the third partner in the company is now the CEO, and has pretty much, taken the company where it is today.
Right.
Do you think
go ahead.
Do you think Pete Sessions is going to pull a Boehner and join like the board of Tilray or something pretty soon?
Yes,
of course he will. Yeah.
I think Pete Sessions will. I think Jeff Sessions will. I think they'll both have. By the way, they're not related, and I think they'll both have investments in the hemp industry now if they don't already.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we knew hemp was going to pass was because Congress had disclosed that congressmen personally have millions of dollars of investment in hemp right now, and that's how it's going to pass. And really, marijuana was a gateway drug for hemp. And now that hemp is legalized, it will pave the road for marijuana to become legalized as well.
Agree.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of a backdoor approach, but
it's going to work. There's been nothing about this industry that has run transparently or straightforward.
No.
Everything has been almost in spite of itself. Everything.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard one to connect the dots, how it's rolling out over the last 10 years.
Yep. And it's why I found a decent livelihood in consulting, because a lot of business people have really good common business sense, which is totally useless in this industry. Good common business sense is not functional in the marijuana industry because you're not running in a functional industry. You're running in a dysfunctional industry. So you need to anticipate where common sense needs to wait until bureaucracy can catch up. One classic example, one of my clients is a company called Incredibles. They're the leading edible maker in Colorado. And the amount of labor and overhead that Incredibles puts into packaging makes no sense to any industrially packaged company in the world unless you're in marijuana. And the reason that they manually package as much as they package is because the guidelines change 2 to 3 times a year in terms of what packaging needs to be. And if they're going to invest $2 to $3 million every time the guidelines change in new equipment, they're never going to get out the door. And they learned this 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So as all of these guidelines change, they have humans that change their process in order to meet the latest packaging change. That is insane.
It is.
For any business in any industry to be manually packaging 10, 20, 30,000 candy bars a week is insane.
Yeah.
But
shout out to Bob.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bob, great Bob and Rick, great business people.
Yes, they are.
Really enjoy working with them. They're my if you will, most notable client. But I also work with small CBD companies like Michael's, and I work with CBD companies like Veedverks and other THC companies, and a lot of ancillary businesses that are trying to find their way through this network. And unfortunately, I would say more often than not, the clients that work with me, I convince them not to come into this industry. The hurdles to get into here and what you have to lose are enough to discourage and should discourage a lot of business people from coming into this. But when they do come into it, and I work with them, they come into it with their eyes wide open, and the first time they have to redo their packaging, the first time they have to redo their labeling, the 13th time they have to redo their labeling.
Yes.
Nobody is surprised, because we understand that is the nightmare that is working in this industry. And Travis, how many times have you had to redo your labeling and your packaging?
Tons. We have rolls of stickers that we use to seal our starter kits that say we had to change the milligrams. This wasn't due to regulatory things, but we have so many of them. Like, I have this room back here that has kind of like crown molding on it, and I started doing a stripe of these stickers around there, and then I realized I could do all the crown molding, and then I did some math and realized I could do almost that entire room. I could wallpaper the room in these rolls of stickers that are useless to us.
Yeah.
And There was a time when we were putting amending packaging with, well, like 2 additional stickers per package. Like I'd say that like after lab testing, lawyers, stickers, those are the 3 things that we've probably spent the most money on so far, in that order.
Lab testing, lawyers, and packaging.
Yeah.
And I'm going to expand stickers to packaging because I don't believe there's a company in this industry that wouldn't tell you that those are the 3 biggest costs.
Yep.
Now, if you start a chapstick business or a light bulb business or any other business in the world that has the full support and protection of the federal government, those will not be your top 3 costs.
Right.
And so when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Mark, I built systems in the healthcare arena. I want to come into marijuana. I've built chapstick in the real world. I want to make a marijuana-infused chapstick." None of their assumptions hold water as a startup in this industry. And if they follow those assumptions, and I've got plenty of case tests of people that didn't listen to me.
Sure.
And the worst was a coffee company, an infused coffee company out of California, hired me to give them advice. I gave them all the advice. They followed none of it. They'd gone through $450,000 in 9 weeks and shut down.
Wow.
Jeez. That's tough.
It is.
That's tough.
And then we had the
same problem at MJ Freeway. We built a point of sale system. We didn't know we needed to build a grow system.
Yeah.
So now we have to build a whole nother system for a grow system that somehow manages to tie into the point of sale system, none of which reconciles because you're dealing with an evaporative product, so it doesn't reconcile.
Yeah.
An evaporative product.
Weight
dehydrates.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Marijuana you sell by weight, and it dehydrates. So you put a pound of it in the safe and you come back 2 weeks later, Houdini has removed some of that and no one else has the combination. Yeah. Well, that in a federal world is diversion.
Yeah.
Oh, evaporation.
Well, it does. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not funny, but it's a good
well,
example of the challenges that we face.
Companies like BioTrack and MJ Freeway are as successful as they are because every point of sale that has been white labeled from another industry fails when it touches marijuana, because in every other industry, you buy 10 t-shirts, you put 10 t-shirts on the shelf. If there's 8 t-shirts on the shelf when you do inventory, 2 t-shirts have either been sold or stolen.
Right.
Well, marijuana, you put 10 pounds on the shelf, 2 pounds can literally disappear from evaporation, spillage, and overweighing, none of which is theft.
Right.
Yeah.
All of which is federally illegal. So somebody's got to account for where those 2 pounds went. And that's why companies that are true seed-to-sale tracking companies, and there aren't that many of them.
No, there isn't.
It's why they've got the market share they do, and despite having put their customers, in MJ Freeway's case, through an exorbitant amount of pain.
Sure. Well, getting back to like labeling, the CBD industry is dramatically different as far as the marijuana industry from the standpoint, CBD can be sold almost in most states. So you have different requirements for labeling in different states. Like Indiana, you have to have a QR code. So,
we don't have stores in Indiana.
Yeah. So people think they want to come in there and get into the gold rush of CBD. They have no idea the pitfalls and the costs, the problems, and the success, really. But it's still a great industry to be in. You just got to go in full knowing, what's ahead of you.
This is a great industry and a terrible industry. I think it really comes down to whether or not you are at heart a masochist and whether at heart you're a problem solver.
Yeah.
Because for the first couple years I was in this industry, it literally drove me insane. Yeah. I'm a computer nerd. Do we turn on a sales tax calculator for California or do we not? Well, in order to follow the guidelines and laws in California at the time I built MJ Freeway, if we turned on the sales tax calculator for California, 100% of those dispensaries using our software could be shut down for collecting sales tax because they're supposed to be operating as a collective.
Right.
If we didn't turn on the sales tax calculator, 100% of the dispensaries running without collecting sales tax could be shut down overnight for not collecting sales tax by the Board of Equalization. So no matter which solution I picked as a computer nerd, 100% of my customers are in jeopardy of being shut down with 24 hours notice.
God,
That's
I remember.
how California wanted it. That was their way of keeping the bad guys out, is they could just arbitrarily go up to any store and say, you either are or are not collecting sales tax. You have 24 hours to shut down.
Yeah.
And for a computer nerd, that is dizzy making. I don't know what the word is. It literally sent me insane. And between that and the challenges with my partners, when I left MJ Freeway, honestly, I wasn't all that inclined to go run BioTrack, because it was many of the same problems. It's you're dealing with a computer system that is a discrete, finite mathematical unit to solve a political problem that is cultural, stereotypical, and cannot be solved mathematically. So it is an interesting industry, and today it is miles ahead of where it was 10 years ago.
Yes.
But it is not an industry where you can walk in and go, I have solved these problems. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I don't. I know conclusively how not to open up a de novo credit union in front of the Federal Reserve, because I know how badly that failed.
Right.
If I were to do things differently at MJ Freeway, obviously I would do a lot of things differently there as well.
Being the only one that owned it.
Well, that's not true. No, that's not true.
No?
Both my partners were equal partners.
Okay.
I brought in my wife and Jessica as equal partners to the company. I've never been a selfish guy. I knew that we all could do this together, and I knew that we all should have an equal share.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wrong. And I really paid a horrible price for that, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Sure.
But the reality is, if I had still been divorced out of the company and owned a third of it when the servers were hacked and crashed and did all that stuff, I probably would be on less amenable terms with my ex-wife than I am right now. Yeah. So perhaps she did me a favor by forcing me out before I had to live through all that devastation.
It's a good way to think about it.
Last time I saw you, we were at an event, and I was concerned about losing our banking because Elevon, is that the name of the credit card? Elevon had just kiboshed all the
30-day notice, right? Did you get 30 days?
Well, we didn't use them for our credit card processing, so that didn't affect us. But they're owned by U.S. Bank, and we bank with U.S. Bank, and so I was very concerned that. And I had been called in to talk to the new local branch manager, and I was pretty concerned that we were going to lose our banking because, I mean, if they won't process your credit cards. But nevertheless, it still seems like it's a little bit easier to deal as a hemp company with the banking system than it is for,
marijuana.
You know, a marijuana, a business that touches the plant or that touches the plant that has over 0.3% THC.
You got to understand that from a credit card processing standpoint, they have to really understand and be clear about what business you're in. And Travis, a business like yours, like Veedverks, it's so abundantly clear what business you're in. There's nothing about it that's a gray area. You're not touching marijuana. You're not processing for other people. You're not even offering that, I believe, smokable flower, right?
Nope, not touching it.
So, and the reason you're not touching it is because that comes close to looking and smelling like marijuana.
Identically,
and you don't
almost.
want to get in that realm. So I just spoke at NOCO, and the analogy that I used is it's kind of like offering credit card processing if you're an escort service. Well, if you're a true escort and you just provide company and you spend time with people, that's actually legal. Yeah. And many escorts can take credit cards. But if that escort service gets frisky and starts to color outside the lines of being an escort service and is now a prostitution service, that's illegal. And it is really up to Elevon or anybody else to know thy customer, know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And they have to know that Veedverks is a true CBD company. And once they know that, they can feel comfortable banking it. But for the hundreds, thousands of CBD growers, hemp growers, CBD processors out there, it's much more difficult to tell who is what.
Sure.
And that is really why Elevon pulled their credit card processing, is not because all their actors were bad actors, but they found a few. And they couldn't really figure out an easy way to tell who was a good actor from a bad actor. And I've heard rumors that certain major CBD companies have been allowed to keep their processing, but on a one-off basis and one or two. I'm not surprised that you're allowed to keep your banking for now. I also wouldn't be surprised if you lose your banking down the road, because it really comes down to one person's decision at a bank, and it is that person's job to keep the bank safe. Yeah. And so it's a tough position for the bank to be in. It was a really tough position for me, because when I had the See Forever Systems, the kiosk, I had banks in 4 states that had agreed to take marijuana deposits if they used the kiosk. The kiosk met the Cole guidelines. The Cole guidelines outlined how to take the money. Everything lined up perfectly, and it didn't matter, because in the end, the stigma of the plant overruled the reality. And what we're finding right now with the problem with Elevon is the stigma of marijuana is invading Elevon's ability to service the hemp industry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
And that's a shame. But it is where we are. And there will be other credit card processors. There are other credit card processors coming on now. It's amazing to me, Travis, that you didn't use Elevon for credit card processing, but you used their parent company as a bank.
We well, our first bank, TCF Bank, which sucks.
He loves that. I love
TCF it. Bank sucks.
What other bank?
They canceled our banking with no notice. I heard that they just hate small business in general, is what I heard. But I know that they just gave it. It was a bunch of crap, and it's so disruptive to lose your banking. We had checks bounced.
This really comes
forever to sort that out.
This really comes from our war on terror. This came from the 9/11, and it came from our Justice Department realizing that our one effective way of winning the war on terror was through the banking. And so our Justice Department pretty much said to our banks, hey guys, you are our first line of defense. And if you see anything suspicious, you have to report it to us, and then we have to go after it. And if we find a criminal that banks with you and you didn't report it to us, we're going to come after you personally for aiding and abetting. And that is way beyond the marijuana industry. This was about terrorism and anti-terrorism and Osama bin Laden and getting to the bottom of the 9/11 attacks. And it sent the banks into the position of being the guard dog for our Justice Department. And they've been that ever since. And so our banks have this fiduciary responsibility to know your customer. And that means that they not only need to know, Travis, you and Veedverks, but they need to know who you're selling to as well and who you're buying from as well. Because if you're, using this money to go promote some nefarious illegal activity, it is the bank's responsibility to get to the bottom of that. And that's a huge compliance onus on an institution who has really been under the gun from a lot of different avenues, not the least of which is most of us don't really like having a bank account. We don't like paying fees. We don't like being treated like we're treated at our banks. And so the idea of being a part of a financial revolution that was led by the cannabis revolution was as attractive and as exciting as anything that I've ever been a part of. And it led to an act before Congress, which, for a computer nerd out of Telluride, Colorado, it's a big deal. And I'm very proud to have been part of it. I'm proud to have been part of MJ Freeway, although I'm not as proud of how they've handled things since I've left. But I'm proud to have been a part of this movement. It has not been easy, and I will tell you, it is not the financial windfall that everybody tells us. Travis, how long have you been in this business now?
4 years. The company's over 4 years old now.
And you're buying, as I understand it, you're buying islands in the Caribbean with all your extra mony. Is that
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, he took me there on his jet a couple times.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not an easy road to profitability. It may be an easier road to unrealistic valuation returns.
Yeah.
But that an unrealistic valuation and profit are very, very different things. And
Absolutely.
I'm an old school entrepreneur. Everything I do is what it takes to get to cash flow positive. What is the minimum viable product that you get money from, and then how do you grow that to cash flow positive? If you had given me $10 million to build MJ Freeway, I probably would have screwed it up. The reason MJ Freeway worked is because we built it off of my income. We built it off my life savings.
Sure.
And so every penny needed to have a return. We needed to know that customers were going to pay for and appreciate what we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop.
Sure. A lot of people don't realize they come into this industry. You better come in and be prepared not to take a check home for a year or two.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Since 2010, I have earned a steady check 14 months since 2010.
That's not funny, but it is. To all the people out there that really think, this gold rush, you just come in day one, boom, you're throwing money. Well, you've got the islands and the jets, but still, that they're just slamming in the money. It's not that way.
Travis, why don't you clarify that so nobody actually thinks you do have islands?
No, they know our show.
I own no islands.
No islands, no jets. He flew one once, but yeah.
But and you have been doing, a shout out to Veedverks. You've been doing the blocking, tackling, and punting of this industry, totally on the hemp side, totally on the legal side for 4 years now. And I can tell by the look on your face that you're not rolling in the dough.
It's just wait. This will
be the year.
It's like the Dust Bowl days. Next year's our year.
Next year's going to be it for sure. I think
rain gonna come next year.
Well, I think our Tuesday morning podcast is going to get us into the millions.
Oh yeah,
of dollars.
Were you one of the top 100 people?
No. You know what? I don't believe in top 100 people of this or anything. I don't believe in, this is the best CBD product. This is the best marijuana. This is the best. I don't believe none of that. How can someone say, the judging that goes on, Mark, this strain, this product for this marijuana bud is better than all these other 10. Do you believe in that? I think it's just a personal choice.
Together, you can just report the results of what they. I believe in it to an extent.
Yeah, an extent. I don't know.
You're just all bitter.
No, I'm just realistic. I've been in the industry for 7 years almost now. I've seen everything. I've seen a lot of what Mark's been through and a lot of what our listeners have heard about. I've lived it as well. The seed to sell. It's funny to hear you talk about it back in the beginning days of you, and then when I was in it with BioTrack, it parallels. It's just crazy. It's just it's just funny.
And seed to sale is a magnificent example of the lunacy of this industry. Seed to sale doesn't track any seeds. It is a weight-based average, the internal mechanism of which is only visible to government agencies. So you can use none of seed to sale tracking for your own inventory control or your own business expertise. It's the way the government can use the mechanism to shut you down.
Yeah.
Well, that's not any other business. If you're a liquor store, you have to do inventory control. You have to pay your taxes, but the mechanism by which you buy and sell inventory, and so you know how to stay in compliance with the government. Seed to sale tracking doesn't share that information. It doesn't even share what it captures with you, so you don't know if you're out of compliance. It is not a complementary a mechanism. It is a mechanism by which the good guys get to try and figure out who the bad guys are.
Right.
Well, that's not how you build an industry.
Right.
You build an industry expecting that we are all reputable players and that we are going to work together to build a legitimate industry. And good players like Veedverks have come forward and set the standard for how to do this right. And I'd like to say I've been a part of some of those companies as well, to make sure that they understand how to do that right. But in general, every company that I've seen that has tried to get into either the marijuana or the hemp side of this industry without some form of internal specialist that has had their ass kicked for a while will lose way too much money way too fast and get out. Okay. I don't know of anybody that's gotten into this industry from another industry without some internal help and has stayed in. Sure. It's just too costly. The mistakes are just too painful.
Yeah. Landmines everywhere. Ones that take your life too. Are possible. Yeah. Amen. Crazy.
So where are you at now, Mark?
So I founded a company called I Work for Cannabis. And that really is back to my roots in Telluride of my consulting company of no employees. The actual line is no effing employees, but I know I shouldn't be cussing.
No, you're allowed to on our show. It just cost you a quarter.
So it is me, myself, and I, and my network. And when you hire I Work for Cannabis, you hire me, and I become part of your team. And I work with you. And when we need to bring in lawyers, I know the lawyers for taxes. I know the lawyers for seed to sale violations. I know the lawyers for different applications. When it's time to pick seed to sale tracking systems, when it's time to pick branding, when it's time to pick your name.
Yeah.
What CBDRX, great example. Big company spent umpteen millions of dollars building a brand only to find out that having CBD as your name is taboo.
Yeah.
They lost all that branding. They lost all that money. They had to start all over completely. And they've lost that mind share. Yeah. That is
they're making it back pretty fast though. Shout out to Functional Remedies. They
Is that them?
Right? Is that the wrong name?
Nope, that's them.
Yeah. They've I'm seeing them everywhere now. They're pulling some publicity stunts that I'm envious of. But yeah, you're right. They had to.
Money they had to do over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's really where I try and work with my clients at I Work for Cannabis. Is I really try and give them a heads up so that we can avoid some of these potential pitfalls going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that we don't have CBD in our name.
Yeah.
Well, we actually the name of our company when we started it was we'll fix this all in post. Don't worry about it, Mark. But Veedverks LLC, and we couldn't get banking. But then TCF Bank, which sucks, when we changed the name to Veedverks Unlimited Limited, then they gave us banking up until they just didn't. And so yeah, just having something that sounded like a weed type of thing.
Yeah.
So they didn't like Veedverks because Veedverks sounds like Veed?
Because it sounds like Weedworks, except German, like Veedverks.
Yeah.
So we changed it to Verks Unlimited, and then
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't change anything else that we.
You got to play the game.
About what we're gonna. Yeah.
I
about
would never
what we're
have named
doing.
MJ Freeway, knowing what I know today.
Why? Yeah. Why the MJ part or what?
Yep. The MJ part.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Picking a name is really important.
I loved that when I founded Freeway, the purpose was to end prohibition. That I thought was a valid and worthy purpose.
Yeah.
Today, I don't believe that that's really that company's mission. And I think without that mission, we all fail.
Sure.
If our fundamental mission isn't to legitimize the plant, we all fail. Because whatever we're doing with this pseudo-legal plant isn't valid until it's valid in the eyes of the government.
Yeah.
True.
Aristotle spent the last years of his life under house arrest because the government refused to believe that the earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around.
Yeah, they were all.
It's been crazy since time,
right? They were all Ptolemists.
Yeah.
Silent P.
Yeah.
Right.
Huh.
Isn't that the guy's name? maybe not.
I don't know.
But this is really where it comes from. I stopped throwing up because marijuana is an anti-nausal unlike any pharmaceutical we know.
True.
Humans need to know that. Everyone has thrown up at some point in time in their lives and hated it. I don't know anybody that goes, oh, I just can't wait to vomit. Yeah. It's not fun.
Right.
And to know that there is a naturally grown, easy to absorb, one hit does it. You don't need to be stoned to stop throwing up. It's an antispasmodic. One hit and you're done.
Yep. Huh. It's crazy.
And when I went to my doctor and I said, Doc, stop prescribing me this. I want a prescription for marijuana. He said, Mark, I think marijuana for you is a miracle drug. I said, Doc, you've prescribed 5 different pharmaceuticals, one each day. Every day I've called you and told you I'm throwing up nonstop. You know I smoke marijuana. Why on earth wouldn't you mention it? Yeah. And his answer was, Mark, we live in Telluride and it's a pot town and I can't get to be known as a pot doctor. Yeah. So if my patients find it on their own, I will advise them on it, but I cannot recommend it. Well, I'm sorry. I just threw up for 5 days. Where is it that the Hippocratic oath comes into play?
Losing your license. The government, bottom line. If they want, they're just,
There are a lot of doctors who it's going to have to be in a pill, and they're going to have to be able to write prescriptions for it to ever fit into their way of doing medicine.
Yep.
It's going to have to be put in, in pills and tablets, and IV bags and stuff, and they're going to have to be able to keep charging their $32,500 a year for something that we know shouldn't cost anywhere near that. But
it's ridiculous.
That's going to be their level of comfort. Like my dad just called me this morning right before the show. He's going through chemo. Oh, wow. And because he lives in Kansas, and he was pretty excited about not having to do chemo tomorrow. They're on like a chemo break. He's halfway done. But I'll tell you what, if his doctor is never going to be somebody, maybe if you put it in a pill, his doctor would prescribe it. But until then, all of the nausea and stuff, it's the same thing that you just told me. They keep giving me, gave me a new pill for the nausea, and we'll see if that works.
It's a shame.
It sucks.
It's a crime.
Lives in the wrong state. Yeah. And I don't know. So there will be a place for pharmaceutical types of cannabinoid products in our medical system, and they'll help a lot of people. But
my biggest concern is they're going to make synthetic marijuana, THC, or the products, medical products. Yeah. It's not going to be the actual plant. And
what if you grow the cannabinoids in like mushrooms or some kind of algae or something like hops? We already know that can be done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have
there's
a problem with
Thailand that grows a full cannabinoid profile that doesn't grow THC.
Yeah.
Really?
MJNA is looking at exporting that for CBD, as it's not a scheduled plant.
Huh.
But
you never know.
The focus, unfortunately, our focus in medical has always been on what is legal and what keeps you from getting sued, not what helps you.
Right.
That is a definite fact.
And we are, marijuana has opened up a door for a lot of people. Anytime you go to any of these marijuana meetings, you get people that raise their hand like me that say, I am prescription free except for marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only pharmaceutical that I take, and I keep a doctor's recommendation for it from the state of Colorado, not because I need it in the state of Colorado, but because I believe it's a medicine and I believe it deserves to be treated that way. And so I subscribe to a paradigm in Colorado that at least gives lip service to it being a medicine, even if even in the medical program there's no real respect given to its medical efficacy. One day there will be. One day marijuana will be included as an additive to most pharmaceuticals because the placebo effect is quite significant, and there's nothing like getting a little high to make you think you're going to survive this shit.
I love it. This is one of my favorite shows right here. I always love listening to you, Mark. You're incredible. You spoke at my meetup last year. You speak the truth, and a lot of people need to hear that.
Yeah.
No fluff.
Because I've been a nerd since I was a really young kid, and I learned that being able to talk about technology was more productive than being able to actually program it. And I'm actually not a very good programmer. I'm really very good at conceptual. Is not something I'm good at. I've been very well trained on speaking. ADP spent tens of thousands of dollars training me for speaking. My employer before that was a big company called John Deere, who spent thousands of dollars training me to be able to represent how technology can help evolve industries.
Sure.
So when I had the opportunity to propose seed to sale tracking to the state of Colorado, even though I had no idea what seed to sale tracking was, I knew exactly how to do it.
Right.
And I knew how to phrase it, and I knew how to explain complex technology in a way that really non-technical people could understand. And our government is fundamentally about as low tech as you can get.
Sure.
And they bought it. And never mind that it tracks seeds that don't actually get tracked, and never mind that it's done on averages that aren't mathematically solvable. At least the government understood health and human safety, diversion control, and taxation.
Right.
One paradigm hit all three. They could understand it. And to the extent that we've got legalized marijuana today, I believe it's in large part due to seed to sale tracking.
Sure.
And to the extent that we've got legal hemp today, I believe it's in large part to the millions of dollars that marijuana has generated in tax revenue.
Sure. Agree.
I have this. This is the most ominous question. How would you like to be remembered?
This really goes back to that moment when I was in the kitchen and I stopped throwing up, and I had the delusion that I was going to be the nerd that ended cannabis prohibition. I really thought MJ Freeway was going to be the mechanism, and it was going to be heralded as the mechanism that helped end cannabis prohibition, and it's not. It's going to be heralded as the first computer system in the industry that has had terrible, terrible data security and data and software security problems. So part of me feels like these last 11 years of my life have all been in vain. What the heck was it all for? And I was a very happy retired ski bum and Telluride before I ever got into this. So what do I want to be remembered for is actually something I spend a lot of time thinking about, because I've put a lot of effort into trying to legalize marijuana. And today we are 12 years from the time that I knew it was a medicine, and we are not legal. And I live 4 miles right now from the Utah border. And if I decided to go for an ATV ride with the wrong stuff in my saddle, I could be in jail for a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's insane. We need to end prohibition. We need to end this mouse show. And we most importantly need to let patients know this is a medicine that can help them. And sooner or later, I hope to have that opportunity to have that effect. I think that's what I'd really like.
That's powerful.
With our millions of viewers and listeners, I think you've just accomplished it. Mission accomplished now with our enormous reach.
Well, if it's okay with you, we're going to submit this to my good friend Andrew Pizzicalis. Yeah, he has Purple Haze Radio.
You can't say his name, but
Purple Haze Radio and Purple Haze Radio, and we're going to stream it on there as well. And he's got a lot of viewers, a lot of followers. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, if they're following and they want to get a hold of me, they can find me at iworkforcannabis.com.
Okay. iworkforcannabis.com. Mark, what a pleasure. I tell you, I always love, hanging out with you, talking to you. This has been a great, this has been one of my favorite segments by far. And,
nice.
I hope to see you soon, Mark. I'll tell you, I want to say this is how you'll be remembered by me. You're one of the people, when I see you at an event, I always kind of just make a beeline toward, because I always want to talk to you. You're one of the people who I just truly enjoy about this industry, and you've got a great deal of experience. So
true pioneer.
Yep.
Win, lose, or draw, you're a true pioneer in the industry, and we thank you, and the industry thanks you.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Another excellent episode of the Mainstream Cannabis Media Empire. We'll see you next week at 10:30.
Take care, Mark.
Peace out.